Namaste. My name is Tendi Sherpa. I'm a co-founder of HIMALI and I'm a mountain guide. I have been working as a mountain guide since the last 25 years and summited Everest 18 times. Today I'm here at the HIMALI Podcast for HIMALI Podcast episode number 3. And I'm very excited today as I will be sharing this podcast with one of the most legendary American climber, someone who has summited all the 14 peaks above 8,000 meters without oxygen. And so I would like to introduce you to Ed Viesturs. I know that a lot of people knows Ed already, but I also know that there are many who might not know about Ed. So I would like to welcome Ed to the podcast and welcome to podcast number 3, Ed. And please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, Tendi. Thank you. It's really nice to be here today. A little bit about myself. I started climbing in the late 1970s, so I've been doing it for a long time.
Wow.
And, I learned about mountaineering, and then I eventually started to guide, mostly on Mount Rainier, and then eventually all over the world. And then I finally started to be involved in big Himalayan climbing in the late 80s. And then I made it a goal to climb the 14 highest peaks in the world over 8,000 meters without oxygen. And that eventually took 18 years for me to complete that project. Wow. And since then, I'm still able to do some guiding, which I really enjoy. I've written some books. And my day job now is mostly doing corporate speaking events, talking about leadership and teamwork and something that I learned incidentally as a climber about risk management. Mm-hmm. So everything I do, everything I've done my adult life has to do with mountains. And I'm still very passionate about that.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah, well, this is not the first time we met. So it's been about 5 years that we have been working together at HIMALI. Like our first meeting was in 2009, where I got an opportunity to work with Ed and the team in 2009. And I was working as a surfer at that time. I still remember that so well. And that was actually my first job as a surfer, because surfer, many people may not know about surfer. So surfer is the lead Sherpa, is someone who lead the Sherpa team up on the mountain and looks after the logistics and everything. And so I got that opportunity as a surfer at that time, and I was able to work with Ed.
Yeah, that was a great expedition on Everest. That was my 11th trip to the mountain. Yeah. And we had a great team. We were there filming, doing some photography. And I remember working with you. And the beauty of working with somebody like you run the Sherpa group, you're the head of them, you're the boss. And I remember in the early days where, we would talk to the Sherpa and help them decide what would go up the mountain and how many loads and when and where. And by the time I was working with you, you guys were so experienced, you would basically tell us, Ed, here's what we're doing, here's when the gear's going up, here's the plan. And you, the Sherpa now have taken it to another level. And it's been a really interesting progression that I've seen in how we work with you and the fact that your skill set has grown to the point where the Sherpa now, you're leading trips, you're guiding all over the world. And I kind of call it Sherpa 2.0, right? And it's really amazing to see, and I'm very proud about what you guys are doing out there.
It was a wonderful expeditions. I still remember that so well, and I think we had one of the wonderful team that year, and I got an opportunity to work with the guide team, and I learned a lot even as a surfer. Actually, my first job as a Sherpa on Everest was started in 2003, and until like 2009, I used to work full time as a Sherpa, but I took an opportunity to learn from the guides and leaders about how to manage the logistics and things up on the mountains. And at the same time, I think I learned some of the most important skills that I needed, to climb mountains safely. And I learned a lot from you and from many other guides. And I think so much has changed on Everest. I mean, since when I started in 2003, and then finally we worked together in 2009, and then I kept working, and seems like a lot has changed. How do you think how much has changed up on Everest? Since you started climbing.
Well, Everest, as you know, is very popular. It's the highest mountain in the world. A lot of people aspire to climb Everest. Now there's a lot of guide services providing the opportunity for people to climb Everest. And I think that's great. I mean, I think we're living in an adventure era. The average person has decided they want to go climb Everest. They want to raft a river. They want to go skydiving. And that has created a lot of crowding on Everest. And I get asked a lot about that. There's so many people on Everest these days. Why is that? And simply because it's the highest point on Earth. It has changed a lot since my first trips to Everest. My first trip there was in 1987. And in those days, it was really hard to get a permit. The government of Nepal was very restrictive. You might have to wait 2 or 3 years to get a permit, and they might only sell 1 or 2 permits. And you'd be on the mountain, and there might only be 1 or 2 other teams there. So it was more intimate. There was much less crowding. You felt like you were alone. And that's the experience that I had. And since then, obviously, the opportunities have grown. The number of guide services has grown. The government of Nepal makes a lot of money selling permits. So you can understand that rather than restricting the number of permits, they'd rather sell more. And that has created a lot of controversy. Why are there so many people on Everest? Why are you allowing so many people? It's just the way it is, and that's the way it is today. And I know you've seen that. And you, as a Sherpa working there, you and your team have to learn how to negotiate those numbers. And how do you feel about that as it's happening today?
Yeah, that's very good point, Ed. Actually, like when I started climbing Everest in 2003, back in that time, the life at base camp was pretty simple compared to today. I know it used to be even more simple back in the days when you started climbing Everest. I can only imagine those days. But like when I started climbing in 2003, we had like a very simple camp setup, with like a simple dining tents with no proper floor, just like rocks. Sometimes we just make a rock chairs with kind of like a rocks and things. Everything was so simple, no luxury at all. Mm-hmm. But every year from 2003 to like 2009, it was kind of like still same, but it started to pick up from 2010. It started to change a lot of things. And so, as you said, like more and more local outfitters was born, and they started running expeditions as well. Everyone used to, because there is no kind of like fixed rules how to set up your camps and how to organize expeditions, who to accept or not. There wasn't any kind of like special protocols to accept the clients for climbing Everest, and suddenly like that kind of trend keep increasing, that trend keep going, and a lot of the outfitters started improving their logistics and all that things. And from the government point, I think all they do was like, provide the permit. Of course, they've been talking also a little bit about like maybe requiring some kind of background experience before they come to climb Everest. But till date, I mean, not a fixed rule has been set for that. And I think also from like the infrastructure, especially like internet and Wi-Fi and all these things made mountains even more popular. Now people have like a Wi-Fi at base camp. You can live chat with your family, with your friends, with your company, and you can even give a live chat to your audience. So this is something that we didn't expect when I started climbing Everest in 2003. And these are the things that probably made Everest a lot more popular. And obviously, like as you mentioned, that Everest is the top of the world, and everybody want to really go there. A lot of trekkers come to until base camp to see the Mount Everest and to see the base camp where climber spends like 2 months, for their climbing or for their ascent of Everest. And now, like I can see the big increase of climbers, especially from 2015. I can see a huge number of climbers growing up, and for us, I think it's very normal for someone to dream to climb Everest. And as a mountain guide, I really appreciate, first of all, that people want to come climb Everest, because really, like mountaineering is one of the big income source for Nepal, and government collects a lot of permit for that, and for us as a guide also, we really respect that. But at the same time, if I look at the safety point, I see some kind of safety concern as well when I see like a huge growing numbers of climbers. I think there's no problem with the growing numbers of problem, but the problem is sometimes with the climbers, those who have not been on any mountains before coming to Everest. And they have seen a lot of documentaries and a lot of like a film made on Everest, and I think Everest kind of became really, really popular all over the world. For us as a Sherpa, we have such a important and such a special respect for the mountains, and it is a very sacred mountain. And sometimes when I see there is like a huge traffic up on the mountain, I feel like probably Everest doesn't really deserve this reputation. So nowadays, like a lot of the clients, get a good assistant up on the mountain, especially for climbing Everest and other 8,000 meter peaks in Himalayas. And they get assisted with like a private guide, and there is like a logistics in place, and there is like enough Sherpa manpower to carry your personal stuffs up on the mountain. And there is a team who set up a icefall, a Kumbo icefall, which is known as a icefall doctor. Mm-hmm. So this icefall doctor fix the ladders and put the ropes, and they maintain the icefall route all the time during the climb. And then there is a team of Sherpa guides who fix the rope above Camp 2 to Camp 4 and all the way to the summit of Everest. I mean, I can only imagine when you started climbing in the Himalayas back in those days. Did you have the same kind of logistic? Did you have same sort of services at that time?
No, it was very different. And I think the big difference today is the fact that, the Sherpa do have the skill set to fix ropes and to lead the route and to go all the way to the summit way before the clients go up. And that has to do with money, right? The more money you have within an expedition, the more manpower you can hire, you can have more oxygen, all that. In the early days when I started to go, I wasn't guiding on Everest. We were there just to climb it as a group, as a team. We didn't have the financial resources to hire a lot of Sherpa. We might hire a few. And also in those days, the Sherpa didn't have the skill set to go first, to put in the anchors, to fix the rope, to find the route. So we, as the Westerners, were doing all of that. We were leading the route. I remember carrying ropes and ladders into the icefall. And if there was another team on the mountain, there might be another team, we would share the burden. We would help each other. We would collaborate with what other teams were there to fix the route through the icefall. That was kind of the big deal. Mm-hmm. And obviously fixing rope up the Lhotse face, it's a very steep, exposed face. We would fix that. But beyond the South Col, we typically didn't have a fixed rope on the summit day. We were just there climbing. And then eventually, as we progressed and I progressed, I did start to guide there. We still were sharing a lot of the burden with the Sherpa. And quite often, if I was the climbing leader, I was there, telling or helping the Sherpa what loads needed to go up, when they wanted to go up. And I would work with them. Instead of just sending them ahead, I'd say, no, I'm part of the team. I want to show the Sherpa that I'm helping, I'm contributing. I'm not just sitting here sending you up the mountain to set up a camp. And in fact, I actually got in trouble once because I was carrying loads every day with the Sherpa and thinking, they're going to invite me as part of the team. And they started to grumble a little bit, saying, and I said, what's up? And they go, well, Ed, we get bonuses for every load that we carry. And I said, and they said, you're taking money out of our pocket by every load that you carry. We don't get paid for. and I said, no, I'm not trying to save money. I'm just trying to be part of the team and show you that I'm involved with you guys. And once they understood that, they invited me into the group, and then they just called me Sherpa Ed, and then, and so I was always wanting to be involved in the process, to carry loads, to fix rope, to set up camps, because I felt for me, that was a way I was earning the summit. Right. And even when I started guiding, I had my clients be involved in that process as well, because I think when you're guiding on Everest, it's about teaching people. And when they go home, I want them to have learned something about the actual process rather than just showing up, having everything in place, clipping into the fixed rope, going to the summit and going home. What if I'm not around? Do they know how to set up a tent? Do they know how to operate a stove? Can they make a decision? That's all about teaching as well as guiding, right? And I think we're kind of losing a little bit about that process. I wanted the client to have help carry their own equipment, to kind of earn it, Yes. But that's my viewpoint, and it's not everybody's viewpoint, and it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I just think there's more to that than just going to the summit, to actually be involved.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely very true, Ed. What happens for Sherpas when they work on the mountain is they get paid in two different ways. So the one way is they get paid based on how many kg they carry the load up on the mountain. And then the one is a second one is they will get paid in lump sum. So kind of it's a fixed. So they say okay, I'm going to give you this much money for working on Everest this season. So when somebody is trying to help carry the load when they're working in a fixed kind of rate, they will really appreciate and they will try to ask for your help as well.
Right.
But then when they're really working based on they carry the load and they have 20 kgs or something, they always count the load in the altitude and they get paid on that. And they will note down how many load they carried, especially when I work as a server, I sit down with a group leader and we spend an hour or 2 hours together to decide what we need for high altitude. Mm-hmm. And once we have all decided between server and a group leader, then myself as a server, I go to the store. I try to separate everything what we need, how many tents, how many oxygens, how many gas, and how many ropes, and all that necessary equipments for high altitude. And I separate that and I set it out there and call all the Sherpa team. And then we divide those loads. So there are many strong Sherpas who want to carry a big load. Mm-hmm. And then there are also Sherpas who wants to carry just a single load. So for example, if you carry 10 kg above base camp, that is count as a single load. So sometimes they say, okay, I'm going to carry 2 loads. So that is a 20 kg. Sometimes I used to, back in the days when I used to work as a Sherpa, I used to carry up to 50 kilos. I still remember that very well. And good thing is, good thing is you make some money by carrying that, but obviously it's not easy.
Yeah.
is very tough because you have to use the head strap,
Right.
put the head strap on your head, and you use also your shoulder.
Yeah.
And then one of the hardest thing with that kind of like a heavy load is like when you cross those suspension ladder bridge, they swing a lot. But then there is a fixed line on the both side. We hold that. We try to balance our body on that and without load on the ladder. But it's still, I kind of found very, very difficult carrying a big load. So I still remember when working with like a different guiding company and different mountain guides and leaders back in those days, I got a lot of support also from those guides, and that's something what I learned from them. And these days, I mean, when I work as a mountain guide, I have learned that great educations from the other guide and leaders, and I like to deliver that to the Sherpas and to the younger generations especially.
Yeah.
You have actually written a book called No Shortcut to the Top. That particular word itself, no shortcut to the top, it's very meaningful. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what it means and about your philosophy about it?
Yeah. That's a book that came out almost 20 years ago, believe it or not. And I really had no intention of writing a book because I thought, who's going to care about what I did? Why should I write about myself? And I had a good friend who actually became my co-writer, David Roberts, and he's the one that said, Ed, no, you have to tell people your story. And ultimately what I wanted to do is convey the things that I learned, not just what I did, but what I learned along the way about how we work as a team, how we make a commitment, how we have patience, how we're involved in the process, and very importantly too, how to manage risk, how to make decisions based on not just success, but survival. And as we talked about as well, as I love the process of climbing a mountain, the preparation, the training, putting a team together, and not skipping anything along the way, not taking a shortcut. And as you know, when you're climbing a mountain, you can't cheat your way to the top, right? You can't buy a summit, you have to earn it. And that's the beauty of mountaineering. And you want to look back then after you reach the summit, how did I get here, right? How did I involve myself in the process? How was my patience? How was my humility and all that? And, thankfully the book has done really well. But I think I would have sold more had I titled it Shortcuts to the Top, right? I think a lot of people are always looking for a shortcut. But again, it's all about being involved in the process. Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone should learn from what you just said, because really mountaineering is not just about getting to the top of the mountains. There's mountain itself. It's a beautiful. There are beautiful approaches to climb a mountains, and I think if you skip those approaches, I think you kind of miss a big thing. So that's why sometimes, I totally understand when, people come climb kind of like Everest or other 8,000-meter mountains, that they have dreamed about it a lot. They have put a lot of efforts and a lot of energies and times and money into doing this. And it's pretty challenging. It's not easy to do climbing. So I can understand and imagine how much efforts and energy they have put into it, and it's normal to dream about summit for sure. But really, what I really think will be very important is to enjoy every single process of the climb. And then, of course, the top summiting is maybe one of the biggest goal, but again, the biggest goal is to always come back home to your family and share your stories. And that's why whenever I'm guiding also by myself with the clients, I always try to share with them how important is the summit, but then what is even more important than the summit. Summit is there, and you summit and enjoy the moments there, and then make sure you come back home safe. Sometime people don't, always people, if you think all the time about a summit, but not enjoy the whole process, then you are missing a lot of things. So that's why I always believe like summit is like a cherry on the cake. I mean, you have to eat that cake. That cake is the most important one.
Right.
And then, of course, like after you finish the cake, grab that cherry too.
Right.
But enjoy the cake as well, not only the cherry.
Yeah.
So.
And I think a lot of that has to do with patience as well. And the problem is, when some people go to these 8,000 meter peaks, particularly as a client, you're spending a lot of money. You've planned your whole career to climb Everest or one of the other 8,000 meter peaks. You spend a lot of money to be there. And for a lot of people, it might only be a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
So they're very, very fixated and focused on the summit.
Right.
And if it doesn't happen this year, it'll never happen. And I think that pushes people to make decisions that they normally wouldn't make.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like for myself, I knew I had a whole career of opportunities. It took me 3 times to climb Everest. I was willing to be patient, and something that I learned early on as a guide, and something that you as Sherpa believe in is we learn how to listen to the mountain. That was what dictated what we got to do and what we didn't get to do. In spite of our investment, in spite of how much money we spent to be in a particular place, that didn't make the decision of whether we went to the summit or not. Ultimately, it's the mountain, right?
Yes.
It's the conditions, it's the weather, it's the strength of the team. And we as guides learned how to evaluate all of that information. And that's how we make our decisions.
Yes.
Not summiting at all costs, but knowing with humility when to move forward, when to retreat. Yes. And again, that's all about being patient. And if you think it's only a once in a lifetime opportunity, you're going to break those rules and you're going to push beyond what's normal or what's safe.
Absolutely. Yes. And like nowadays, beyond Everest, like nowadays, seems like the culture of climbing 8,000 meter peak is becoming more and more popular every year. And what do you think about this thing, Ed?
Yeah, now instead of just Everest, people are guiding other 8,000 meter peaks. Because there's a demand for it, right? And I think it's kind of interesting. When I was doing all the other 8,000 meter peaks, they weren't being guided. There was no demand for it. Now there is. And we could go, like, for instance, I was on an 8,000 meter peak with my partner Veka. We were on Shishapangma one year, and we were the only 2 people on the mountain.
Wow.
And I could see Everest on the horizon, and I said, there's 1,000 people today on Everest, and there's only 2 of us here on Shishapangma. And I absolutely loved that, knowing that I was in a place where a lot of other people weren't. Yeah. But now these other 8,000 meter peaks are being guided. Guide services are providing the service. Sherpa are willing to travel to these other peaks. So it's a different world right now in that part of the world. Yeah.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about one of your memorable experience during your climbing in 8,000 meter peaks, and how did risk management and humility played in your climbing?
Yeah, I mean, those were big factors. Risk management, humility. That's something that I learned early on as a guide from a few of my mentors that were senior guides on Mount Rainier. And in particular, one of them, Eric Simonson, who taught me all those lessons, invited me to go on my very first expedition to Mount Everest. That was 1987.
Wow.
And after 2.5 months on the mountain, he and I made the final attempt together to go to the summit. So here I'm climbing with my mentor, my teacher, and we ended up 300 feet from the summit. And I was thinking, wow, my first trip to Everest, we're going to get to the summit. This is pretty cool. But very quickly, we could tell that the weather was deteriorating. And the risk of going to the summit was going to be pretty dangerous. And together, we stood there and we made the decision to turn around, 300 feet from the summit. So ultimately, we did listen to the mountain, right? You grow up with a set of rules that you learn about and the protocols. And the important thing is not to break those rules, by success. And I think a lot of people do tend to break their rules high on a mountain, right? Mm-hmm. They know what they learned, but in spite of that, they aren't willing to listen to what the mountain is telling them, and they keep going. And that's where a lot of accidents and deaths occur, right? Ultimately, it took me 3 times before I climbed Everest. So patience was the key. Enjoying the process was the key. And then to come full circle, when I finished ultimately to climbing the 14 8,000 meter peaks, Annapurna was at the end. The mountain that I read about as a kid that got me inspired to climb. And it as well took me 3 attempts to climb. It was probably the most dangerous 8,000 meter peak I ever went to. And I was actually afraid of it because of the avalanches and the risk that I couldn't control. And once again, on the final push to the summit, we were trapped at high camp in a storm, 1 day away from the summit. And we ended up spending 2 days there, keeping the tent from collapsing, wondering, would we have an opportunity to go for the summit? Mm-hmm. And once again, the patience paid off. And we were then, I think, at the right place at the right time. And we were allowed then to go to the summit. So those were all the lessons that I learned early on. And I think I attribute my survival and my success ultimately to having lived by those rules, not to be tempted to break the rules for the sake of success or to please other people. I think a lot of people go into the mountains, especially today with the pressure of social media, with the pressure of sponsors. They start to make decisions based on pleasing others rather than doing it for themselves. And I think that's something that you got to remember when you're up there. Do it for yourself. Yeah. And if it doesn't work today, it might work tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a beautiful philosophy, Ed, and what a great experience you had. Really like back in those days at your time, how do you get like weather forecasts and things? Because these days we have, we get to choose our summit push with the weather forecast and internet facilities and everything at base camp and upper mountains. Yeah. People have internet access almost to the 8,000 meter these days, and they get like a fresh weather forecast, everything, and they know which day is good and which day is like a risky to attempt the summit. Yeah. Whereas I keep asking question myself, how should be like back in those days, like in your time when you have to decide for the summit? How did you decide for summit? Like I think as you have like a very limited resources and limited access to the internet, maybe to get the weather forecast was not that easy at that time.
Yeah, we didn't have any of that. We didn't have internet. We didn't have cell service. I remember, you'd go on an expedition and you'd write a postcard and you'd have a mail runner, a local Sherpa or whatever, he would take your mail and run it down to the next village, and it ended up in Kathmandu. And we joked that a lot of times the postcard that you wrote would take longer to get home than you did. That was our form of communication. Wow. We didn't have weather reports. We carried altimeters, which are basically barometers. So we would watch the pressure of the barometer. Was the pressure increasing? Oh, that meant good weather. Was the pressure decreasing? A storm was coming. And a lot of times it was just hit or miss. We would go up and hope for the best. And ultimately, you weren't always successful. You couldn't guarantee success. Throughout my whole career, I was successful. For every 3 expeditions that I went on, 2 were successful and 1 out of 3 was not. And that was what you expected. That was the batting average. And you just said, well, it didn't happen this year. We missed the window of weather, or we never got the window of weather. I mean, the beauty of today is you have very, very accurate weather reporting. You can plan your summit day based on when the wind is going to start dying, right? And you can hedge your bets in a lot better. I kind of like the mystery of it, right? To just stick my nose out the tent door, see what the clouds are doing, look at what my barometer's doing, and again, hope for the best and see how it plays out.
Right. Yeah. Wow. You must have a great, passions at that time, because like nowadays, since we have all this facility of getting the fresh weather forecast every day, like one of the challenge these days is like for us is the weather. Really, the weather is one of the main thing. Yeah. And I think also this has created all the like traffic jam problem up on the summit of Everest and summit of like even on K2 these days. I started seeing some traffic on K2 since a few years, and I think this will just increase in other 8,000 meter peaks in the near future too. So the things is like. I don't know, how was it, you will tell me, how was it back in those days when you were climbing? How stable was the weather window at that time? I mean, these days, we check out the weather forecast before we plan to go to the summit. And if we see one good weather window, we definitely go and plan on that day. But when we get to like Camp 2, sometimes weather suddenly changes in the last moment. So we have to kind of hold there, and some team, they still want to continue, and different weather forecast shows a little bit different kind of reports. So it's not 100% similar forecast. So that makes also some people quite confusing about planning their summit push. And so if my report shows really bad, then some others weather forecast shows good, is still good weather and doable. So, I mean, personally, we've been using a De Keyser forecast since 2014, and this weather has been working very, very well. Especially this report has been accurate. But I have been experiencing the change in weather so fast. I don't know if this is because of the climate change or global warming, if there's anything to do, but I don't know. How was it back in your days? Was the weather window pretty good for most of the mountains?
Yeah, the weather reporting is a big factor these days, and the accuracy. Early on when I started out, we didn't have that. We would go up hoping for the best. Sometimes we'd get to Camp 3 and realize that we weren't going to hit the window of weather, and we'd go all the way back down, right? Sometimes we'd get all the way to Camp 4 and actually make a push for the summit and have to turn around, 300 feet from the summit. And that was kind of the end of the expedition. It was really hard from that point to regroup and go all the way down and resupply and get strong again. And sometimes I would sit at Camp 4 for 2 or 3 days waiting for a window. Now, obviously, with the weather reporting, especially on Everest, we've talked about it and you mentioned it, the guides are pressured by the fact that when that first window of weather comes and that predicted summit day arrives, everybody wants to go and hit that first window, right? Rather than thinking, there's going to be another day, there's going to be a third day, there's going to be a fourth day. Everybody goes and aims for that first day.
Yes.
And you've seen that. That's what creates the high number of people that go for the summit on that certain given day.
Yes.
And it's even the guides that are saying, listen, group, why don't we wait for another window? They get pressured, right? By the fact that there's this group think going on.
Yes.
4 or 5 teams are going. Why aren't we going? We need to be going as well. And that's something that you've got to be strong about, I think, as a leader. And it's up to the leaders of those teams to decrease the crowding by saying, we're not going to go when everybody goes. We're going to wait for a few more days. There's obviously a risk that you're not going to hit the window, but I think it makes it safer ultimately.
Yeah.
Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, this is what we have been doing over the past couple of years. It's like, as we have internet access to like at base camp, and, we get radio communications up on the mountains when we're guiding. And so we get to receive the fresh weather forecast, and that will tell us what to do. The one thing that we do every day is to check on the weather forecast when we're ready for a summit attempt. And again, like the last point to check the weather is at South Col. So that's like 8,000 meter, and we go there, and we know that weather is looking good for the next day for summiting, but we want to again make sure. So we contact the base camp by radio and check on the weather, and if weather is still looking good, we're ready to go. And then all what I do most of the time during climbing is like I have got a bunch of screenshot of the weather forecast, and I try to stand outside of the tent and see if weather is matching or not.
Right.
It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but it should match at least 95 or 90% of the forecast. So we try to stand there and feel the wind and see the clouds moving in, and that gives us a lot of idea. And if it is like sometime the weather forecast shows pretty accurate information, and we go ahead with that plan. But like first stop will be Camp 2, and then if weather doesn't look good for the next couple of days, we try to stay at Camp 2 for like 3 or 4 days. Because if you have to spend a longer time at a high camp, that might burn out your energy. So you might even have to go down to base camp, where it is like a more oxygen, and you are burning out less resources as well, and less oxygens, everything. So if the weather changes, and if it is bad for like a week, then definitely we're gonna go down to base camp. Wait at base camp, again check the good weather forecast, and come back up again to Camp 2, see how the weather is looking. If it is looking good, then we move to the Camp 3. Then again we check on the weather in the evening, on the weather for the next day, and then also the summit day. And then finally we reach the South Col and check on the weather again. A lot of time we had a really good weather, and we were able to summit on our plan. But a few times I had to turn around from South Col. When you have to turn around from South Col, that is the last camp. You're very close to the summit, because climbing from base camp to all the way to the South Col, which is the Camp 4, it's a big deal, because you have spent many days already. You have spent a lot of oxygens and a lot of like foods and all the other resources. So when you have to turn around from South Col, it's definitely it discourages the clients. But the most important is again the safety. Safety is always what it wins. So safety is the most important, and I had to turn around, especially like one time from South Col, because weather said it is going to be okay. We went to South Col, and we started getting like almost like 100-kilometer wind at South Col, and then the summit day was supposed to be about 70 kilometers wind per hour, the wind speed. And if we climb on that conditions, we'll definitely not be climbing fast in that kind of wind conditions. And obviously in the death zone, everybody climb pretty slow. Your steps get shorter, and everything gets slow. So my main concern at that time, and one of the reasons why we decided to turn around from South Col, was that there was already quite many people climbing on that conditions, and I imagine that if we have to wait on the line and get exposed in that kind of high wind, people are going to lose their fingers and toes. So that's the reason why we turned back, and we wanted to come back up again if weather was going to be good. But unfortunately, the weather kept getting worse and worse, and we got hit by like a huge kind of like storms, and there was a lot of snow up on the mountains, and so that happened to us a couple of times. And one time, I had to turn around right from the top of Hillary Steps. I was like, oh my God, it's just there, now we're so close to the summit, and we still had to turn around there. And because one of my client had an issue with his eye, and so we chose the safety part, and we decided to turn around from there to base camp. And actually, when we made that decision to turn around from top of Hillary Steps, of course, he was very disappointed. But when we got back down to like South Col, he really appreciated, and he thought that that it was such a good decision to turn around.
No, I've had that as well. Where, I mean, in the moment, you're telling your group, hey, based on the conditions, based on the time of the day, we have to turn around.
Exactly.
And they're looking at the summit, and it's 200 or 300 feet away, and they question you. They might want to argue for a moment. But you're the leader. You've made the decision. You've kind of informed them why you've made the decision. Yes. They don't quite believe you in the moment, but when you do get them back to camp and they reflect on that moment, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, thank you for making that decision.
Yes.
You made the right choice. And it might take them a while to understand that, that's the hard part of guiding, I think, is making those hard decisions.
Absolutely.
And it allows you to say, hey, we'll come back another day. It's not going to happen today. We can't make it happen. And that's a good lesson for people, right? To say that there's no guarantee of success.
Exactly.
And that's the game we play in the mountains.
Yes. Yeah. Like sometimes I hear some people saying like, oh, maybe, people want like a guaranteed things, will I really reach the summit of Everest? I mean, I can't guarantee at all. I can't guarantee that I can reach the summit of Everest, even myself, even though I have been there, I've been working there for 25 years. You never know, because, this is a health things, and sometimes weather problems, sometimes the health problem, this will all cause not being able to summit. So, that's why, like, as you told before, you should listen to the mountain. Just listen to the mountain and be humble, be happy whatever you have done, and try to make the smart decisions on time. And what happens is, like, when you reach there and you couldn't get summit and you come back down, if it is in the early summit window, you may even get a chance to try again. But for most of the climbers, once they reach last camp, which is the 8,000 meter or even above that, if they had to turn around because of a different reason, and to go up again is pretty hard, because you have to resupply all the oxygens and all the other resources, and so probably that might be the end of the trip. But again, the most important thing is that they're alive.
And something, that I've learned as well, especially in Nepal, especially from the Sherpa, because of the Buddhist religion, you look at the mountains as entities, like almost like living, breathing things. And when we're there, we're entering their space.
Exactly.
And we have to be humble, right? And people always say, oh, you conquered this. I don't like the word conquer. I'd rather say that out of respect and humility, and how you act on the mountain allows you to go to the top, if you're at the right place and the right time. And I've always remember that. I always feel like the mountain is watching me, right? And based on my actions, it's going to treat me in a certain way. And the one thing I've always do when I leave the mountain, when I at the bottom, as I'm walking away, that last view of the mountain, I always turn around and I say thank you, to the mountain, for the journey, for the experience, for letting me have safe passage, you know, and that's one of the cool things I've learned. And that's part of the thing too, when we travel, you know, I've gotten to go to Nepal and Pakistan and all over the world because of climbing. I've met so many amazing people and learned about their culture and their religion and eaten the food. I mean, that's a huge bonus, right? Absolutely. We're climbing in a different place, but I'm getting to know all these different people as well. And Nepal is actually one of my favorite places to go because you people are so amazing and wonderful and welcoming. Yeah. And the mountains are part of your life.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, from the very beginning of the mountaineering expeditions in the Himalayas, you know, Sherpa has been involved as they live in high altitude. They were very strong and already acclimatized to work on the mountain. And again, like Sherpas believe all the mountains as a deity.
Yeah.
As a local deity. So they believe that those mountains protect their village and protect them and also get blessings from those mountains. And a lot of the prayer ceremony, when they perform a ceremony in their village or in the monastery, they usually pray, you know, they include the mountain deities in their prayer. Because like Everest is known as a Chomolungma in our Sherpa language, and also Miyul Langsama is the specific name of the deity for Everest is a Miyul Langsama. So when we invite a local monk from the village in the Everest regions, they come to the base camp and they particularly pray the deity, you know, asking for a safe passage for the climbers, and one of the things that I'm very happy about is like, yeah, of course, there are a lot of things has got changed up on in the Himalayas, especially in climbing cultures and even mountain has changed. But something that I feel really happy is that people are still carrying on that tradition to pray the mountains and believing in mountain that she is actually the deity. And this I strongly believe as well. Like every time I go there, before we step our crampons or boots into the Khumbu Icefall or into the Everest Glacier, we perform a huge prayer ceremony at base camp, which we call it puja. And that puja is particularly, really offering the deity, like with the prayer flags and fruits and drinks and things like that. But at the same time, asking for our safe passage for us, for all the team members, and also for the world, you know, it's basically for everybody. So, and that gives us a huge confidence in ourselves that mountain will protect us once we have requested this to the deity. And that's why, like a lot of the time, you know, when we're there, we don't climb to like Camp 1 or Camp 2 without doing this prayer ceremony. And we have this special like Tibetan calendar, which shows which day is auspicious. And we decide as per the Tibetan calendar. And when it says it's auspicious and we do that prayer ceremony, and then from next day, everybody's ready to do their activities in the altitude. And that's why, like, it's very, very true that how important is to have a humility for a climber up in the mountain. It's not just about climbing, you know, as I think, yeah, of course, maybe there's some ego there, but I think we should not practice a lot of ego. Really be there in the mountain, be respectful to the mountains, because mountain deity, we believe that she really wants us to be in a good humility, in a respectful and compassion. And that saves also a lot of energy for us, you know, and that energy and that blessings will finally lead us to the summit of the mountains. It's also a tough job sometimes.
Yeah,
I would say compared to many other jobs, maybe our job is one of the toughest one. But at the same time, we see something that you know, you don't see every day.
it's true.
And I think mountaineering is really, really unique, you know, despite the hardship and all that. And there are so many moments and so many memories to cherish as well. You know, how have you been, how have you been living this mountain, kind of like mountain life?
Well, you know, thankfully, I still get to live the mountain life. I'm still guiding. I still get that outlet. I get the satisfaction of teaching and seeing the joy in people's eyes, as you do when you get them to the summit, when you help them achieve a goal, when you push them beyond what's called normal. And I think that's what I've learned a lot about in the mountains, is how hard I can push myself to achieve a goal. Being patient, being resilient, being patient about dealing with things that are hard and things that are uncomfortable, right? There's so many excuses today where you say, I don't want to do that. It's too hard. It's going to take too long. I won't have any fun. We do have a different version of fun, that's for sure. But I wouldn't trade that for anything. The experiences that I've had, the things that I've learned about myself, hopefully how I can impact those lessons to others, my family, my kids, to show them that it's okay to do something hard. Don't take the easy route, because in the end, it's very rewarding. It's very satisfying. And that's kind of the gift that I got from mountaineering. And I wouldn't, again, trade it for anything. I'm so glad I did what I did. I lived a dream being in the mountains. I accomplished a lot of the goals that I sought. And it was hard, but it was fun along the way as well.
Mm-hmm. What a wonderful thought, Ed. Yeah, I think it's a very, very true. Like as a mountaineer, as a climber, I mean, we live a different world sometimes. I share with a lot of people that I actually have slept more in the tents than in my home, in like proper building. I have spent really like over the past almost 30 years now since I started working from like a trekking to like climbing. Now almost been 30 years. Only on Everest is 25 years, but during like last almost 30 years, definitely I slept a lot more in the tents than in the home. And sometimes when you come back to home, obviously you're so happy to see your family, and you have a different kind of joy at being with the family and being able to come back to your home. But at the same time, everything feels too luxury at home. The beds, like the beds, that simple bed you have at home, that seems like so soft, you want some rocks.
Right.
And sometimes when I come back from climbing mountains, I feel pretty comfortable to sleep on the floor with my mattress and that stinky sleeping bag, just to keep that mountain kind of vibe, and it's obviously like when you're guiding and when I'm working up there, sometimes I feel like, oh my God, this is too hard now. I wish I'm going to go back home, something like that. But then when you come back after you finish the season, after like 3 or 4 days of being in the city or being at home, you already start to miss the mountain. Yeah. Because really, like when you're on the mountain, you completely leave the different world actually.
Yeah.
Free from all kind of stress. Of course, you have a different stress as you are carrying a big responsibility as a guide, but you feel like you are living in a different world where it is like so happiness. You open the jeep of your tents in the early in the morning, and you have a beautiful view of the mountains, and the wind and mountain, the sounds, they all become like so familiar and so friendly actually, and so you really miss those beautiful moments. And like as we've been talking a lot about humility, about being respectful and being patient and all this is something I think is very important for many people to learn. Is something what I'm also trying to deliver to the younger generations of the climbers in Nepal nowadays. It's like, as I lead the team of Sherpas on Everest, one of my big goals is not just to have them work on an expedition, but also I really want to deliver some good message to those young people, what we believe, what mountain really means, how to be respectful to the mountains and to the climbers and to the nature, because as you can see these days that mountain is getting more and more busy, but at the same time we also have some problem with the trash and the environment and things. And as these days we have a more growing numbers of educated mountain guides, they have been actually very active in trying to educate people, like local people and like climbers, to be very careful about the environment. So that means to say like, hey, bring down your trash, bring down all the human waste up from the mountains. Back in the days, I don't know if people maybe were not very much aware of it, but like sometimes they leave the trash behind, and sometimes not necessarily trash, but they're like a proper equipments, like let's say tents, they're in a good conditions, maybe you are sleeping bag, you just leave it at maybe like let's say in South Col, and you are planning to come back up again the next few days later to bring those down, because they cost a lot of money, and they're very valuable belongings for clients. So as the climbers couldn't carry everything after their summit, everything down to base camp, our Sherpa team are supposed to go up again to bring those down. But sometimes weather restrict all that, and you can't go up again. And these belongings and these tents, this sleeping bag becomes a trash by next year. But the good thing now is like the government of Nepal has actually started the cleaning campaign on Everest since couple years. And I think this has been playing a great role to keep the mountain kind of clean. And I really hope that the government will continue on doing that. And like for example, as you know, that at base camp, at camp 2, camp 1, now you can't leave any trash. Especially at base camp, you have to leave base camp 100% clean. You can't leave even a small piece of trash there. So government, when you obtain the permit, they keep a deposit, a good amount of deposit in Kathmandu by the Ministry of Tourism. So that deposit is like, if you don't bring your trash from the mountain, then you're gonna lose that deposit, which is a big money. And that's why like climbers are first, they're like obligated to bring down the trash that they have produced up on the mountain. And we have a government campaign going on, but I think it still is very important for younger people to understand how important it is to keep the mountain clean. Not only, I'm not talking about just the Sherpa and guide, but also client themselves, how to be responsible for their own trash that they use up on the mountain. And for last few years, I have been seeing a lot of climbers being responsible and bringing down their own trash, but it's still there are quite a lot of amount of trash, especially up in South Col, and hopefully this will be improved. And this is something what I'm trying to do by myself as a guide, to give a good education to the younger generations, and I'm very happy that the younger generations are very motivated to be in the mountains and to carry on this profession as a climbing Sherpa or as a guide. And more younger generations of Sherpas are also very much encouraged and motivated into getting a climbing training and getting a diploma in mountaineering training and things like that. And that will obviously create, I think, a lot of safety on the mountains. And so our main goal really is to keep our clients safe and our team safe. And given like all this opportunity with the facility up on the mountain these days, I think this will definitely make it easy even for the guides, to navigate all the safety things.
Yeah, I agree with all of your philosophies and your ideas, and it's been great to hear your side of the story and to talk with you. And I think Nepal should be very pleased that you are one of their leaders and a teacher and a mentor to the younger generation. The world needs more people like you. And I think with the messaging you have and the ideals you have toward mountaineering and guiding and cleaning, those are amazing messages. And you're going to spread the word. And that's just a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thank you, Ed. Absolutely. It's a great honor for me to hear your stories and your thoughts. I truly appreciate it. For me, as a young mountaineer, you are a mountain father for me. Absolutely. Yeah. And there are so many things that we will be learning from you, and we have to learn from you, and there's always something very special in terms of education for a younger generation to learn from the elders. So I truly appreciate your time. I think I have learned a lot, by chatting with you during this podcast, and I truly appreciate your valuable time. And I really hope to share again, the podcast or some other time, or maybe on the mountains or climbing or whatever. So as I tell everybody that our normal office is up on the glacier, up on the mountain.
Yeah.
When we are rope off, that is where our office begins. So hopefully we will be there together on our normal office. And again, truly appreciate it for all your time and all your knowledge. Hope this knowledge will be very beneficial and very helpful for many of our young climbers and aspiring climbers and guides. And I want to say thank you so much again, and thanks for being here. It's been great honor.
Thank you as well. It's been fun.